thank you, Kumar, for the kind introduction and also for having me in this IC. So I'll be speaking on diabetic maculopathy, heart exudates and beyond, as given the topic given by Dr. Kumar. Is anybody going to speak about the elephant in the room? I was wondering if anybody would use that word at all. Anyway, I'm going to use it. No financial disclosures. So diabetic macular edema is one aspect. It is a narrower terminology compared to diabetic maculopathy, which encompasses um, one second, yeah, which encompasses both diabetic macular edema and traction leading to edema and anatomical changes in the macula. So this is my favorite slide, a schematic which shows how capillaries and microaneurysms can leak because of damage to the pericytes, intramural pericytes, and causing leakage of fluid and lipoproteinaceous material, causing swelling of the retina and heart exudation. And until 2001, we had only slit lamp biomicroscopy with 90D or 78D at our disposal to examine the macula for any thickening, and that was only possible with by experienced ophthalmologists. But today we have the optical coherence tomography, which can pick up the macular edema, even the subtle ones. We can pick up with quantification as well. So yellow regions at the macula can mimic DME. We all know that. So how do we approach DME and not miss the elephant in the room? Are these heart exudates? Let us start with a simple picture. Are they drusen? Yes, they are drusen. They are actually reticular pseudo-drusen, and these have been referred to as heart exudates due to diabetic macular edema. And how about this? Are they heart exudates? Yes, they are not heart exudates, although there are a few. This is a diabetic patient with some hemorrhage. You can see here, there may be a few heart exudates which can probably be picked up on OCT or FFA. But there is definitely a picture of drusen. You can see that the dull color of the yellowish spots is, and the deeper plane probably makes it more in favor of a colloidal bodies. Sorry, this is not moving. Yeah. How about this? This looks like this has also been referred to us as diabetic macular edema or diabetic maculopathy, and you can see that the heart exudates here are quite extensive in the left eye, which progressed to become like this. Actually, this is a case of CNVM or probably possibly as PCV, and we should be able to distinguish that. This was referred to us as a cercinate, but what was missed by the referring surgeon was the subretinal hemorrhage. So we have to look at the pictures which mimic hard exudates, mimic diabetic macular edema, mimics a cercinate, and because we have to rule out in such cases subretinal hemorrhage and the dull and powdery hard exudates that I like to distinguish them from the other type of exudates. This type of exudate is typical of PCV. Adult onset Coats disease, a lot of microvascular and macrovascular changes here and here with a lot of exudation at the posterior pole. Coats nodule in an adult is another confusing picture which can be mimicking a heart exudate due to diabetic maculopathy. RAP is another exudation from a retinal artery macroaneurysm. And this is something that I like the most, something that is so much resembling diabetic macular edema. He's a diabetic patient. He has this, and this has been this. Even I would probably uh, uh, diagnose as a case of diabetic macular edema. But what we are missing here is a blocked tributary vein, which has led to this. And tributary vein occlusion is one of the closest mimicker of diabetic macular edema. So coming to uh, edema in diabetics, macular edema in diabetic patient, is it really DME or is it macular edema in a diabetic? This is an example. Pseudophakic Irwin gas syndrome in a diabetic patient can mimic diabetic macular edema. So we have to be wary of this and try to rule out. And there are several points in to distinguish between the two. Coming to diabetic macular edema per se, ETDRS definition of DME, I think everyone is familiar in this hall, and I don't think I have to go into the details. It just quantifies uh, uh, or tells us about the location of the macular edema and the heart exudates. There's another international clinical DME disease severity scale, which again is clinical, just like CSME, where the distance of the heart exudates from the center of the macula is what determines whether it is mild, moderate, or severe. We know that we have diagnostic tools today of fundus photography, optical coherence tomography, and fluorescein angiography at our disposal to diagnose diabetic macular edema, the most important of which is today perhaps optical coherence tomography. So classification that helps this, which helps decide the therapy is the number one is non-center involving edema as in this picture, and the other is center involving edema. And this is what helps us differentiate whether we have to treat this patient or watch. OCT classification, I'll not go into the details. This is just listed out there. So VEGF is an important mediator in the pathogenesis of DME. We know that, but it is not only VEGF. Retinal disease has multifactorial pathophysiology, and we know that there is inflammation, vascular leakage, and neovascularization causing retinal disease. And diabetic macular edema is no exception. There is a substantial contribution of. Is my time up? There is a substantial contribution of inflammation in the causation of diabetic macular edema. So this is an algorithm which I formed for the treatment of diabetic macular edema. Divide it into tractional and non-tractional, and if it is tractional, then surgery is the answer. This is a case of tractional diabetic macular edema, which has a substantial tractional component. You can see the thick ERM causing focal traction at places on the inner retinal surface. And this is a gross traction, which is in a case of PDR. We're talking about diabetic maculopathy. Therefore, I took the liberty of including this in this picture, in this presentation. The left eye of this patient has severe proliferation causing a picture like this total distortion of the macular area with the fovea not much being involved, but the perifocal area is actually detached. So this patient underwent surgery and there was good resolution and the patient had good recovery of vision. Coming to the non-tractional, we have focal, diffuse, we have center involving, non-center involving, and we have for the non-center involving, we have the ETDRS laser or the subthreshold micropulse laser, with which I have some experience and I've used it in selected cases. But as time is passing by, we are using less and less laser. But most importantly, we are using pharmacotherapy, and I'll just come to that. So laser is something that we use very rarely. Surgery is what we use for traction. So what you're left with is steroids and anti-VEGF drugs. And this is what we have in our armamentarium today. Bevacizumab, ranibizumab, aflibercept or VEGF trap, and Dex implant. So let us come to some case examples. A 50-year-old with diabetic macular who's diabetic since 6 years and who has a 6/18 vision and 1/60 vision in the left eye, respectively. And this is the clinical picture, and this is the OCT. So he was treated with bevacizumab in both the eyes on this particular day. He comes back 2 months later, has this picture which is actually resolved in the left eye, but not so much in the right eye. Dr. Kumar, am I running out of time? Are we running out of time?
But you can try and finish.
Yes, sir. Sorry to interrupt, but actually the time is up. But it's okay. You can sum up within the
No,
next
no.
30
What is
seconds.
the time? Actually, it's 8 minutes and 38 seconds. I
Yeah.
thought I had 10 minutes.
No, no, sir. 8 minutes for presentation and 1 minute
Okay,
for
okay, okay,
discussion.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'll have to probably skip these
Please sum
cases.
it up.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Guru
Yeah,
Prasad. Finish.
yeah.
No problem.
So yeah. So another patient who was treated with aflibercept, 1 month follow-up. This is the picture. This is, mind you, a patient with poor vision, and this is the post injection picture, treated with ranibizumab later because the patient could not afford aflibercept, and then he came back with improvement and was motivated for taking more injections. And this is the injection that was given after 2 months follow-up. 6 weeks post Ozurdex, this was the picture, and patient was very happy with 6/9 vision. So what we must consider is patient compliance, whether the patient is able to come or not for follow-up. And the initial visual acuity to choose the drug is another factor that we would like to consider, because this patient had poor vision and aflibercept probably works better. So had this patient had COVID and came 6 months later post unlock, and this is what the patient had. He had patient had florid NVI in both the eyes. So although there were teleconsultation, there was a teleconsultation session in between, it has its own limitations and questions to be answered is: Dex is probably best avoided in severe NPDR. Do anti-VEGFs cause more ischemia and NVI as a result of that? And any relation to COVID is something that I would like to have the panelists' opinion on when we finish this presentation. So this is another patient mixed retinopathy, maybe a CRVO component. You can see the dilated vessels. And this is the story of this patient who had multiple injections, even a PRP in between for PDR changes. And 7 weeks later, the patient, this is actually 14 months later, the patient has actually good resolution of the diabetic macular edema and is maintained well on pharmacotherapy. So what I want you to notice here is that the hard exudates have disappeared in the after 1.5 years. So lessons and observations from this is that be wary of coexisting vascular diseases. For example, a CRVO in this patient, don't overlook background changes, treat the PDR whenever it occurs. Persisting with the treatment helps, and hard exudates can resolve over time with treatment of DME. So this is what I'm trying to reiterate what Kumar said. Don't just look at the posterior pole and the OCT, look at the peripheral fundus. You can have the elephant in the room, the large NBE front. So I think I will skip these and go to my conclusion slide, because yeah, this is something that I would like to definitely tell. Recalcitrant non-responding macular edema, how to approach. So there are some biomarkers. We have discussed this in the previous IC. The OCT biomarkers have been identified, which can be used as a guide to treatment, and they include this hard exudate, the hyperreflective spots, the drill, EZ disruption, neurosensory detachment, and so on. And this is probably an indication that there is an inflammatory process going on. Ultra wide field angiography in DME, ischemic index is high, so do targeted laser treatment, and that will take care of the macular edema as well. This is something which I will probably skip. So in summary, I would say identify the type of diabetic macular edema, whether it is tractional or non-tractional. Identify what is driving the edema by use of the inflammatory biomarkers and other clinical evidence, VEGF versus inflammation, and be aware of OCT biomarkers. Stage the background retinopathy to choose the pharmacotherapy. I always follow this. If the patient is closer to severe NPDR or PDR, I would switch to NPDR. I would switch to anti-VEGF if I'm already giving this patient with steroids. Be aware that DME could be a peripheral disease. So peripheral treatment with the targeted laser photocoagulation is something that I would like to treat with for patients with recalcitrant diabetic macular edema, and we should have a low threshold for switching drugs.